I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
We are Velocities in Music. On this podcast, Tom and I discuss a package of topics pertaining to modern music, including artist deep dives and monthly and annual new music wrap-ups. Before we get started, you can help support Velocities in Music. Subscribe on your favorite podcasting device to automatically get our latest podcast episode sent to your device whenever we release them. Also, Velocities in Music does not want your money. We also don't want to introduce ads into this podcast yet. Right now, all we want is for you to share Velocities in Music with family or friends whom you think would benefit from joining in on the music discussion Tom and I try to create in each episode of this podcast. Tom.
Yes.
August 2016 has been wrapped up.
It has.
It's over. It was a busy month.
It was.
Particularly
for you.
For me.
Yes.
For me. My wife and I welcomed our second child. Our daughter, Isabel, is now part of this world.
Yep.
And I have absolutely no sleep to comfort myself. And
that's what happens.
And coincidentally, no time to listen to music either. But somehow I persevered.
You did.
And
it's impressive, man. Because I did it too, but I don't have, it's just, I don't have a child to work around, so. That's crazy.
It's pretty much consisted, this month has pretty much consisted of just trying to survive, stay awake long enough that I can get my 2.5-year-old son down and asleep. And then it's actually pretty easy. I get like an hour or two every night that I can devote towards just listening to an album. So every single night I try to get in like 1 or 2 listens.
Yeah, that's a good routine.
Yeah, and it's been slower than I normally like. Normally I try to cram in a bunch of albums towards the end of the month, but I've had to space it out a little bit more. Had to be more diligent this month. Just be more intentional about what I'm listening to. And so far it was good. And it also was very helpful that August albums significantly stronger than July.
I was going to say the same thing. Like already in the first week of August, I think more good albums were released than in the entire month of July.
Oh yeah.
And July has no excuses because it was a 5 Friday month.
Yeah, no excuses.
Right. But August was solid. We had some good stuff here. I'm pumped to cover it.
Well, we need to go through and we've got like 26, 27 albums this month?
Something like that.
Yeah, we got to go through and give you guys our overview, our monthly wrap-up of the August 2016 new album releases. So without further ado, Tom's going to kick it off right now.
First, we're starting with Wye Oak's new one, Tween. Wye Oak is a band that Jake and I really like.
Absolutely.
We reviewed their last couple albums, Civilian, we loved, Shriek was very good. And let me tell you, Tween does not disappoint. It is terrific. It blends the atmospheric guitars of Civilian with some of the more electronic elements of Shriek in a way that I find to be really tactful and engaging. Jen Wasner's voice, her vocals are really what carry the album for me. She actually takes a step back in the mix in terms of the writing. Her parts are less complex and moving, yet she's just this domineering presence throughout the album, creating a mood, setting the emotional tone, and bolstering the mix. I really like this. I had very few bad things to say about it.
Yeah, one thing I would say about this record, for me, it was kind of a cool personal experience because I put this record on, and just within the first couple of tracks on this record are amazing. The first track, it's a 9-track record, which is a little short overall. The first track is just an intro instrumental track, if I remember correctly, and then there's 2 just really, really great tracks. Those being "If You Should See" and one of my favorite tracks of the year. I cannot stop playing this on repeat. Track 3, "No Dreaming." Both of those tracks I think are just monumentally great. And then the rest of the album, though, it's not like it like there's a downtick in quality. This whole thing, while a short 9-minute album is 9-track album is extremely focused, and very just great to listen to. It's just one of the most consistent, strong releases this year, and I just couldn't get enough of it. Next up, we have an album called Impossible Dream from American singer-songwriter Haley Bonar.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Let's go with that.
Okay.
This reminded me a lot of Nico Case. A little bit more rock and more dreamy in the sound. It has a tinge of surf rock to it, especially in the washed out, just wall of sound electric guitar chord choruses. However, there's more to the songwriting than just that. Many of the melodies on this record are brilliantly crafted, and all around, I think it's just very well composed.
Next up, we have the new album from post-metal band Russian Circles. The record is called Guidance. These guys just don't disappoint.
Nope.
They don't know how. We reviewed their last two albums, Memorial, and then going back one further, Impros, years back, and both of those albums were great. Guidance is really, really, really good as well. I will say, I think I like Memorial and Impros a little bit better, but that's not even to talk down of this album. It's more just that it's not quite as awesome, but it's still awesome.
Yeah.
These guys are just great.
Yeah, you got a lot of that just very pounding bass guitar, the bombastic drums, the distorted guitar crunches. But like what Russian Circles have always done well, you hear them do well again on Guidance, which is those just stark dynamic contrasts within tracks. These guys really know how to make an album listen out of a post-metal album. And I would say that if, Explosions in the Sky is the epitomal modern post-rock band, Russian Circles are the epitomal modern post-metal band. I mean, they just define what this style is. And if you say post-metal, I think Russian Circles and Guidance just takes that one notch further. Next, we have a soundtrack album from English post-rock / math rock band 65 Days of Static. All one word, mind you. It's called No Man's Sky, Music for an Infinite Universe. Very epic sounding soundtrack title. This is post-rock that is very glitchy and electronic driven. The textures here are very sharp, but I wish the sound wasn't so constantly saturated. A bit of space and depth would have added to the dynamics and emotional appeal, but instead everything is just compressed right to the front of the mix. While the more rocking instrumental compositions of the first half are really enjoyable, I found I was certainly more engaged by the meandering ambient pieces of the back half of this record.
Next, we have the new album from Wild Beasts, Boy King, another band that we've reviewed a couple albums from, and just really phenomenally good band.
Yep.
So this album's kind of interesting because if you look at the album cover, it looks like the poster for some kind of 80s sci-fi B-movie, and honestly, the music sounds pretty close to that as well. The synths they're using have more of a classic analog sound rather than some of the more warm modern tones on their last couple albums. Their previous two albums also had kind of more of a slow brooding sound, whereas this one is more full and aggressive throughout. I don't find the songwriting to be quite as memorable as the last couple albums, but this one is still very good, I find. A lot of it is carried by the fact that the vocalists have a couple of the most enthralling voices that pop or rock music have to offer today, and the music complements that desperate quality in their voice really well. Overall, just a good album with also a very good kind of politically and socially conscious message.
I will not hold you back. I will not hold you back. Matter of fact, yeah. Matter of fact, ooh. Alpha female, I'll be right behind you. Alpha female, I'll be right.
Following Wild Beast, we have the 11th studio album from American Massachusetts-based rock band Dinosaur Jr. I really like the sound and performances on this record. Every song seems to be boiling over with just this anxious tension. The guitars are thrashy yet controlled, and the solos make me more nostalgic for late 70s rock. The songs are simply structured with repeated verses and choruses, so the formula does feel a bit tired by the end of the record. Still, I can't get over how great the chord progressions are and the authenticity of the sound. This is truly a solid record.
Next up, we have another new album from Nonkeen, Oddments of the Gamble. They released an album earlier this year called The Gamble.
One of our favorites this year.
Yeah, now this is Oddments of the Gamble.
Is that like a B-sides record? Would you consider this B-sides?
Maybe kind of.
Kind of like Kendrick Lamar's
Right.
Untitled Unmastered.
Right, but at the same time, The Gamble was an album that was recorded so many years ago that I'm not sure exactly how they crafted it, if they just took all the recordings from those sessions and kind of put it into an album, took the leftovers, made another one, but I'll tell you what, everything that came from those sessions must have been pretty damn good, because this one's just about as good as The Gamble. It's a little bit less spacey, though, and more grounded. But overall, I mean, I got to say, these guys have put out two of what will probably be some of my favorite albums of the year.
Following Nonkeen, we have an album from an electronic artist called Hieroglyphic Being. The album title, The Discos, possessive there, of Imhotep. The Discos of Imhotep. Why, Tom, is there an apostrophe
Why?
there?
I don't know.
Does it
Why
make,
is it there?
does it make any sense to you?
It should be plural. There's nothing Okay. Done being the grammar.
Tom has an English degree.
It's true.
He does.
Yeah.
It's a fact. Anyway, this is an electronica record, and it's pretty good, but not great. I dig the sounds, but the composition doesn't seem to accomplish very much. There's a reliance on driving techno kick drums that prevent the beats from having much intrigue, and the album also lacks any kind of tension or full dynamics. While this would usually make me hate an electronica album, everything else is very well done, and it still makes it very listenable. But I wouldn't go much farther than that.
Next up, we have an album from Blossoms, their self-titled album, Blossoms. I gotta say, if stuff like this in Viola Beach is like the future of pop rock music, then I want out. I find that the melodies here are really dull, the lyrics and performances are uninspired, the synth sounds just make me want to die. This is so boring that I can't believe it. It's just that I don't feel like there's any meat here. I nothing to bite into.
Another issue, because I agree with your overall assessment, I didn't really like this. Another issue is this washy production that they have, which is extremely intentional, yet it takes away from any definition to the instrumentation, and it also removes any organic intensity to the composition. This was designed to be a sound, not a song or an album, and the sound is overused and tired.
Wish I didn't care like I do. It feels like I'm losing you too.
Next up, boy, we got a couple of stinkers here. Factory Floor, their album 2525. This is trancey, repetitive dancey electronica, and just gonna come out and say, not really into this one. The tracks don't justify their track lengths, they don't provide enough interesting beats, and they don't differ much from one another. The intrigue of the writing relies solely on sporadic vocal flourishes and the occasional extra percussive or melodic element that comes in the side of the mix, and then leaves as quickly as it came, because other than that, the same beat just goes on and on and on throughout the whole darn song. The whole album feels disconnected to me and doesn't accomplish much, and it also has almost no atmosphere or subtleties.
Yeah, I absolutely hated this album. Like, listening to the whole thing was a chore, and I decided I'm making a new rule. If your album has like a bass drum sound going the whole time, every damn quarter note of the album, then guess what? Your album sucks. That's just how it is. You made a crap album. It's like, Jake, you know when you look at like a light, and if you look at a light for long enough, then you like close your eyes and you see that light, right? That's how the kick drum on this album was for me. Like, after I got done listening to it, I think I just heard like an on-beat quarter note bass drum hit for like an hour, and it killed me.
Yeah, it's like Night at the Roxbury. Your head just kind of doing that, and
Right.
it's not fun.
No. Next up, we have the new album Furnaces from solo artist Ed Harcourt. Ed Harcourt, I find to be an artist that's really hard to pin down in style or genre. He's very diverse. This album has some more kind of grand, reverbed, washy, epic sounding kind of tracks, and then it has some really just hard rocking moments. At times it reminds me of a more rockin' Damien Jurado, or maybe a more diverse and intriguing kind of Black Keys. But there's just a lot of strong artistry here, a lot of attention to detail within each track, which I love. However, for me, it doesn't quite come together to create something cohesive. It's a little bit too boundless and unfocused to grip me throughout, because it's just so many ideas being thrown at you at one time, which in general actually is a good thing, but then it's a lot to wrap your head around.
I think I like this just slightly more than you did, Tom. I think this is a pretty darn strong album. Lots of varied songwriting and varied instrumental palette, like you were mentioning. Furnaces gets dark pretty quick and brooding at times, yet still finds ways to infuse a lot of melody into every track, and I'm really enjoying listening to this every time I put it on.
In the grass, nothing like a bad trip to bring you down. The only bird in a fishbowl town. Nothing but a bad trip will bring you back.
Following Ed Harcourt, we have the OCs, a very prolific garage rock band from San Francisco, California. Their newest record is called A Weird Exits, and I think that they're talking about like somebody that they're referring to as a weird, or something that is a weird, and it's leaving. I think that's what the album...
I never even bothered to try to interpret the syntax of that of that album title, but that makes sense.
That's why you have me around.
Yeah,
to make sure we cover everything.
All right.
Stylistically, this is exactly what you would expect from the OCs. Fast-paced, thrashy guitar with lo-fi production, which really just means a lack of production, and vocals that are as dreamy as they are visceral. This is more progressive and less track-based than Floating Coffin, their 2013 release that Tom and I absolutely loved, but with similarly great riffs and melodies. To me, it seems to be much more focused on instrumental jams than short, deliberate rock tracks, and I really like the mood and energy on this record. It's simply just fun to listen to.
Now we've got Lydia Loveless's new album, Real. This is alt country. This is definitely not the kind of pop country that's so popular right now, but it's not very classic country either. It's infused with a rock sound and a singer-songwriter feel, but Lydia's voice is just too country to deny that element. The album is all right, but nothing about it jumps out at you. Everything about it is smooth and safe, which means it could be much worse, but it's also not striving for much. It also, to me, felt way longer than it actually is, which is never a good sign for an album.
Next up, we have Horseback with their album Dead Ringers. This is kind of drony, but very sharp and electronic rather than being too atmospheric. Like if Swans or Earth made an album with keyboards, I like the style and sound of this overall. It combines drone with elements of prog rock in a way that's really unique. My big complaints are that the vocals feel a little bit too selected and that there's never a point where enough tension is created to make it all that gripping. The style is interesting, but man, did I have a hard time staying awake to this record. I feel like this album you're supposed to get just completely zoned out to, and I'm just not there. I just want to go to sleep, and as a parent of a newborn baby, this just isn't gonna cut it for me.
Well, it might help you sleep.
Well, yeah, but I don't need any help sleeping.
Oh, okay.
I need distractionless sleep.
Okay, that sounds good.
The lion killer, alone with our love. No fortune teller
Next up, we have an album from the Moles called Tonight's Music. It was interesting digging into this band because their last album came out in 1994. This is actually a band that's been around for a while, but I'd never even heard of them. They'd kind of flown under the radar. So to me, what this album sounds like is like a mix of Syd Barrett and that kind of psychedelic singer-songwriter mode, but also with guided by voices. It's got that indie rock, kind of 90s indie rock feel in the classical sense, but has very strong psychedelic element to it. I mean, if these guys have their roots in the late 80s and early to mid 90s, then that makes sense for them to have that style. But I really don't know how they went through the process of creating this album without anyone telling them to cut it from 75 minutes to maybe like 35 minutes. The songs are all right. I enjoy the quirky vocal approach and the combination of clean acoustic guitar with this noisy lo-fi electric guitar. It's an endearing style and it's performed well, but here's the problem. It's 75 minutes. This album is way too long and still doesn't really accomplish a lot. If it had been trimmed down to a reasonable length, I think it would have accomplished much more. At least it might have. I'd have to see what the track list would look like. But given the fact that once you get to the back half of the album, I think you start to see a lot more variety. Because of that, I'm convinced there's enough great content here it could have made a more concise and effective statement, and I just don't think they quite did that.
Hey there, just making shadows in the sand.
Following the Moles, we have the third record from California-based rock band Young the Giant. The album is called Home of the Strange. And, these guys are known as a rock band. I mean, I've always, when I think about Young the Giant, I've always thought that they were a rock band. But to me, this was very, very much more a pop-infused album. I can still see the rock elements there, but certainly a lot of pop elements here too. I get a big Viva La Vida vibe here. I know, Tom, you thought about Imagine Dragons when you heard this. You have lots of big string production added to the background, which makes it sound a lot fuller than I think what the compositions really are. But I think that Young the Giant's performances and songwriting are pretty good on Home of the Strange, but the presentation of this style always just comes off as very sterile and disingenuous.
Were you looking for someone? As I watched you go, I am mad because I don't know what you used it for. Always talking.
Next up, we have the new album from the ever-prolific of Montreal, Kevin Barnes and Co., Innocence Reaches. So this album is really intriguing to me. I think it's very good, maybe not great, maybe not their best, but for me, it's the most comprehensive combination of their styles that I've heard in a single album of theirs. Stylistically, it stays fresh, but also feels familiar at the same time that it delves into some new territory for them. Some tracks incorporate that newer like pop and trap sound that's really popular today, while the familiar aspects, what you expect from of Montreal, range from their more guitar-based rock, like what you heard on Lousy with Sylvie and Breyer, to the more slick disco funk of like Skeletal Lamping or False Priest. And also some of that psychedelic side that we get on some other their more recent works. The thing I'm not quite convinced of is the songwriting itself, but it was very good. Mainly, actually, the songwriting is pretty good when I think about it. I think there were just a couple of tracks in the middle that I wasn't that big on.
Yeah, so I have to admit, I am a huge Of Montreal fanboy, so there is bias in everything I'm about to say. I saw Of Montreal play live at Woolies in Des Moines last fall, almost a year ago, and it was just an incredible show. So I'm really, really excited for another Of Montreal record because it probably means an Of Montreal tour in the near future, and they've been playing small venues, even in Iowa. Which
hopefully I can go this time.
Yeah, right. Which we don't get a lot of shows here. So any artist that comes through and actually plays in Des Moines, I give kudos to. So love Of Montreal for that. The other thing I'm really excited about is I've seen Of Montreal like 4 times now, and I saw him 3 tours in a row up at First Ave in Minnesota, and the best show I saw was after their Sunlandic Twins record, which Sunatlantic Twins was a much more dancey record, dance pop record.
Yeah.
And it was just, the energy there was just crazy. And as they got a little bit more experimental and moody with their subsequent releases, this shows kind of emulated that as well. It just didn't have the same energy. So I really like that kind of dancier side. You know, the opening track on this record is certainly dancier, and I'm really excited to see songs like that played live. Innocent Reaches was a fun listen for me, primarily the comprehensiveness of the songwriting. And it really does, Tom, as you said, go over the gamut of styles that this band has embarked on over the years. Mm-hmm. The first half of the record relied heavily on the dancier tropes of Montreal's catalog, and I couldn't help but find myself dancing along to all those tracks. Of Montreal has a way of blending catchy hooks and melodies with dancey beats and neo-psychedelic noise. It's just a perfect mixture. The problem was that the back half of this record gets more spacey and experimental, which I appreciate, but I think it deters from the album listening experience. Overall, I thought this was pretty solid, but you know, this is of Montreal. They're really never done surprising us, so I'm happy with a solid record.
Like a flittering, squirming, dying insect, you got glued to your
Next, we have an album called I'm Not Well from Black Foxes. This is fuzzy rock with an emo tinge. Sounds like a mix of Brand New, Placebo, 30 Seconds to Mars, Silversome Pickups, and even a little Jimmy World in there. The emo tinge, to me, was all in the vocals. This guy has a tantalizing voice. He's able to run the gamut from a dynamic perspective. I use the word gamut in two albums in a row here.
Lots of gamut.
I really like that word.
Gamut everywhere.
And spelling it differently every time.
Yep.
This guy really runs the gamut from a dynamic perspective and from an intensity perspective as well. His screams convey pain, anger, and longing, and his singing shows crushing defeat. The instrumentation reminds me a lot of Thursday. Overall, I really enjoyed the sound and presentation of I'm Not Well. This is a quality song. It really shows quality rock songwriting with strong dynamics and intensity.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one as well. The writing and performances were right on. It came together to feel a bit weaker than the sum of its parts to me for some reason. I think that every track on here is pretty good, but overall, by the end of it, I didn't really get a very grand scope. But still, it's just a very good, no bullshit rock record, and I appreciate that kind of thing these days.
Wash away that fear, cloud of smoke. Kaleidoscope, whatever lets you cope. Release your resilient mind.
Next up, we have the new album from Bayside called Vacancy. This is a fairly impressive performance in what has become a fairly tired genre. Bayside are clearly reeking of a pop punk band who've gone a little bit more progressive, sounding maybe closer to Circa Survive, that kind of more modern sound, rather than, older bands like Blink-182 or Newfound Glory. But still, this album is about big walls of guitar, really pristine, harmonized, high-octave vocals. The hooks are fairly catchy, but the songwriting is a little too predictable, relying really heavily on pop song structure. And the vocals are just way too loud in the mix. And in fact, I think the vocals are really going to be the make or break for most listeners. And for me, it's what actually held this album back. They're sung well, but they're way too clean for this style. It just sounds pretty where I want it to be more intense. And that just more reflects me and what I want out of really great rock vocals. I want rock music to rock. And I feel like this just didn't quite do that.
Well, I've been dead all day. Can you tell? Can you tell? This is where I leave here. I save myself. If there's a God in hell, let us pray to be cleansed of every.
Next, we have the third studio record from Irish singer-songwriter Lisa Hannigan. This album is called At Swim. I want to come out and say I think that this is an incredibly strong album, possibly one of the best records released this year. Lisa Hannigan's delicate, playful vocals haunt these moody folk tunes. It's like if Bjork put out an acoustic guitar and piano record. You can hear the texture in her voice, and it sends chills down your spine. While the instrumental composition is fairly simple, usually just piano and some light acoustic guitar, the songwriting is superb. These songs are more fluid compositions than pop tracks, with the instrumentation and vocals spiraling together to create subdued electric undercurrents. I find this album to be just simply riveting.
All right, now we have the new Ganja Sufi album. That's how you pronounce it. The album is called Callus. This is very hard music to explain. The entire album has this hopeless, like post-apocalyptic feeling to it. And I deliberately starting by describing the feeling and mood of the album rather than the actual musical style. But in terms of that, it's got elements of electronica, noise, punk, even some Eastern influences with like sitars and an occasional klezmer leaning. I hugely respect the uniqueness of this sound. It's not really like anything I've heard before in the way that it combines all of these approaches. But for me, that's about the only intriguing dimension that it presents. I don't get a lot from the songwriting or the melodies in particular. I just find myself fascinated by the instrumentation and the presentation of it.
Yeah, this is either a geniusly brilliant or completely lacking depth and substance sort of record. It's kind of like the Jackson Pollock of abstract expressionism. I'm currently not under the influence of nearly enough hallucinogens to think this is genius, so I didn't really like it that much. But I will say this: I will try listening to this record again after going to the Ween show we're going to in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I'm pumped for that.
Next, we have a new album from Cas Mccombs called Mangy Love. Cas Mccombs is kind of an alternative, folky singer-songwriter. He had an album come out in 2011 called Wit's End that I remember just falling in love with. Tom, I remember you liking it, but not loving it as much as I did.
Yeah, not quite as much.
Cas Mccombs has released a number of albums since then, and Mangy Love is, well, Tom, it's certainly a Cas Mccombs sort of record.
It really is. I do feel like he's being a little bit more diverse in his last few.
Absolutely.
He's trying to create this more kind of coy, fun persona. And I think that the style works for him. There's some good songs on here, but I just wasn't overly excited by it. But I will say he's doing some interesting stuff, and given his track record, I mean, if you've never listened to him at all, I don't know if this is maybe the best album to start with, but he's an artist worth checking out.
Just as a blind and a woman to boot. These boots are made for marching, and that's justice too. Run, sister, run, sister, run, sister, run.
Next up, we've got the new album from classic hip-hop group De La Soul. This one's called And the Anonymous Nobody. From what my experience with De La Soul is and their classic albums like 3 Feet High and Rising, this was a surprisingly somber album for a band that has a history of being a little more colorful and upbeat. It's still quite solid, but there are some tracks on here that are a little unjustified, and in particular, there's some songs that kind of infuse like this kind of rock sound, and these couple of rock tracks don't really feel like they fit in the cohesive listening experience. When you couple that with the fact that this is a 68-minute long album, you have a relatively kind of unfocused experience. Still, though, the good bits of this really stand out. These guys know what they're doing. They're good at creating tracks, creating good, infectious hip-hop tracks with some meaning, but I just think that there's some bad ones sprinkled out throughout here.
Pain to withstand pain. Me, myself, place it all on my shoulders and give it my all like heavy lifting. No game without tears and sweat. They claim blue skies with white clouds steady drifting. When pain come to get you, it hit you like flow. Better times will pick you. Do what you gotta do.
Next, we have the latest release from Crystal Castles, who are an experimental and electronic band from Toronto, Canada. This album is called Amnesty 1, which implies Amnesty 2 and 3 are going to come out next.
Maybe.
We'll see. We
see.
just got to wait and see.
Yep.
For modern electronica dance music, I really like this. Crystal Castles have a way of making dance music and electronica dark and brooding in addition to austere and compelling. This album is all about creating mood, and it really achieves this well by maintaining a consistent sound and oscillating intensities throughout the album. While I like the sound and what they are going for, what brings this down for me a bit is that their songwriting approach, congruent with their previous albums, is simplified down to its most basic components, offering just little headiness or craft. This album is all about mood, intensity, and the general sound. It's not about craft or writing, and to me, this will always be niche.
Yeah, I'm right with you, Jake. And honestly, I wondered how this band would even continue after Alice Glass's departure, their original vocalist.
Yeah.
They got a new vocalist, Edith Francis. I thought she did a fine job on this album. But I actually found myself liking them better. However, as you mentioned, it's at the expense of some of the intrigue and creativity that made them a household name by the turn of the decade in the first place. So this album isn't really as challenging, which is why I like it more, admittedly, than their old stuff. But it also makes me realize that the challenging aspects of their music is what made me respect them in the first place, even if it didn't hold a lot of replay value for me.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I love your ambition.
All right, also releasing an album this month is Frank Ocean with his follow-up to the very critically acclaimed album Channel Orange. This album's called Blonde. Now, we're actually not going to be talking about this album on this podcast simply because it's a little hard to get a hold of right now. It's not on Spotify. It was another kind of Apple Music exclusive release. And, Jake and I, we're fine buying music. It's obviously we're not against that. We've mentioned that on several podcasts. But I do kind of have an issue with these like exclusive streaming releases. I don't mind buying music, but I do have a problem with like buying a 1 month membership to something. I don't know. Well, so just to let you guys know, we will get to Frank Ocean eventually, but at the same time, with all the music that's coming out, it's very hard to justify a hurry for any one particular album. So, we'll listen to it when we listen to it, but we're going to leave it off of this month's.
Tom, you remember back in the late 90s and 2000s, like Britney Spears was at the front of everything? Mm-hmm. And she was just this pop icon.
Yeah.
And then she disappeared.
Yeah.
And then now she's back and putting out, not terrible music.
Yeah.
She has an album that just came out called Glory. And to me, Britney is trying to embrace the indie electronica dance sound that's very popular right now. There's clearly an emphasis on making a really consistent sound on this record. It's moody, austere, and lush, kind of like Purity Ring and Imogen Heap, Bird the Baby, and Patchouli Bath. This emphasis takes away from the typical focus she has in her music on catchy pop hooks, which are still present on some tracks, don't get me wrong, but this is what Britney's vocals were literally made for. This isn't an offensive album, but it's not that engaging either. It's bland middle ground, like a crappy cup of coffee with too much cream added to it.
Yeah, I can't relate to that analogy because I'm not a coffee drinker.
What the hell? How do you not drink coffee? What is wrong with you?
It's
I've
easy.
never understood this about people. Coffee is the nectar of the gods, Tom.
All right, you can have mine then. Think of it that way. Anyway, I agree with you. I didn't think that Glory was terrible by any means, but I think that Britney works best when she's just having fun and letting loose. I don't think it works for her when she's trying to be moody or have an attitude. Unfortunately, I think this album is a little more heavily weighted in that latter style that I'm not really sure of. But there are a few tracks that were a little more fun that I think worked for her.
So to sum this up, we aren't hating this record.
No.
But we're certainly not recommending it.
No.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Next up, we've got new album from post-rock artist The Album Leaf, Between Waves. This is lovely, dreamy post-rock. Like you would expect from this group if you've listened to them before, it's heavily focused on kind of a strong, driving beat that adds a bit of a coyness to the sound. It was funny because when I listened to this album, I actually listened to it right after I listened to the new Crystal Castles. And the transition worked more smoothly than I ever would have expected because there are a lot of very front and center kind of not, I don't want to say hard hitting because the intensity isn't really there in the beats, but they're very front and center is how I would put it. Some of the tracks on this record are a little more missed than hit, but overall, the sound and the songwriting is really great, very hypnotic, good melodic grooves, and that's there throughout. That quality is there, but I would have liked to hear the electronic elements produced a little bit differently. While the melodies have a good dreamy quality to them, at times the beats are so clear and compressed that for me they're a little bit too front and center, too much so to create a very warm atmosphere. So I would have liked a little more subtlety and blending in the mix, but still the writing was very good.
And to wrap up, August 2016, we have Glass Animals with their second record, How to Be a Human Being. If you ask Wikipedia, they would tell you that Glass Animals are an indie rock band, whatever that means. I
don't know if I'd agree with that.
I mean, we talk about that, every month. Indie rock is not really a solid label, but with this, I really didn't know where to start or where to begin, because this is a hard album to nail down. It's a mix of indie rock, electronica, and R&B with an emphasis on strong vocal hooks and a colorful sound palette. The songwriting here is really strong. I've rarely encountered pop music, which I would classify this as, that is this engaging. I'm not sure how I sit with this one, just to be honest. Even after a couple of listens, I can tell that I really like it. I'm just not sure how much I like it. Either way, I definitely want to listen to this more, which I think is a really good sign.
Yeah, I had an interesting experience with this one as well, Jake, and pretty similar to you, because I found myself wanting to... I listened to this several times, and I listened to it more than I think what reflects how much I actually like it, because I was just so intrigued by the sound. I would love to see pop and pop rock music move in this direction. I would love to see this get some radio play and get more attention, because I think it's a good album. But more for me, what was puzzling is the first two tracks, Life Itself and Youth, are two of just clearly for me two of the best songs of the year. I cannot stop listening to those two tracks.
Great
They're fantastic. And from there, the rest of the album is not bad, but it doesn't really do a whole lot more for me. I think it's really fascinating, though, that a group that has such a poppy sound is exploring more deep topics. In this kind of pop vein, you get a lot of lyrics that are just about relationships or about being young and living free and being wild or whatever kind of shallow crap is out there. What I love that they're doing on this album, and it's even from the album title, from the album artwork, and the lyrics, it's exploring more deep personal relationships, familial relationships with your parents, with your grandparents, with your siblings, with friends, those kinds of things. A little bit of romantic leaning in there as well. But it's just so much more relatable and has so much more depth in the lyrics and the overall concept. This is not something you really see in pop music these days. So I was really fascinated by that. But the songwriting itself, after the second track, it never really gets bad, but it never really blows me away. So I'm not sure what to think of this one still, but I'll probably be coming back to it.
Well, you will, because it's the Vinyl Me Please record of the month.
Oh, that's true. I am a big Vinyl Me Please fan. Been doing that for about a year and a half now, and they have some good picks in there.
She said I look fine, but I look fantastic. Come back down to my knees, gotta get back, gotta get free. Come back down to my knees, be back to breathe.
Okay, Tom. So that wraps up August 2016, our monthly wrap-up of all the new albums, considerably better than July. There was only a couple albums in there that I really just didn't enjoy. I mean, overall, I thought this is a really enjoyable month of music. Tom, did you have 3 notable albums that you want to recommend for everyone?
Yeah, and they're probably going to be pretty much the same as you. I mean,
do you think so?
I do think so. I would, Wye Oak is up there for me. Lisa Hannigan. I would also say probably Russian Circles or Nonkeen. Those are all great albums.
Well, since you picked, I obviously agree with those picks. I'm definitely gonna say Black Foxes, I'm Not Well. I thought that was a great record. I really liked Ed Harcourt's Furnaces, and Lisa Hannigan at Swim, I think, is just one of the most stupendous albums of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Any that you would advocate people avoid from August?
Factory Floor.
Factory Floor?
I hated that album.
Yeah, kind of going along with
hated
that, Blossoms.
Yep.
I just felt like that just wasn't that great of a record.
With you.
And you know, I'm not quite sure what reviews that album's getting, but
I don't know either.
I probably disagree and dislike it even more.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, what albums, besides obviously Frank Ocean's album, which we promise we will get to as soon as it is not a streaming exclusive on some other site, what albums did we miss from August that you would like to hear from us, that you would recommend we listen to and make sure that we include on our end of the year honorable mentions and albums we missed podcasts that we do in December? We would love to hear from you. What was your favorite record from August 2016, and why is it the best record of the month? Let us know at our website or send us an email. Later this month, we'll return to an artist deep dive in our next podcast episode. Tom and I, as I mentioned earlier, we have the opportunity to go see Ween.
Yeah.
Up in the Twin Cities, kind of, I think like in a week and a half or so.
Yeah. Pretty much.
I'm really looking forward to that show. Coincidentally, we're going to do a Ween deep dive. We're going to be listening to a bunch of Ween anyways. We figured it's time. If you guys haven't listened to Ween, please go check out Ween. We're going to have a ton to say about this band because Tom and I have been listening to Ween for more than a decade and really, really enjoy this band.
Yeah, actually, last time I saw them live was in July 2006, a decade ago.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Thank you guys for your continued support and participation. Tom and I love all of your comments on our YouTube videos, Facebook messages, and emails. Your participation is what makes Velocities in Music possible, so as always, thank you for being awesome. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
We are Velocities in Music, moving music discussion forward.